Hello again. Let's review a multi-phase project because this is something that can be a little confusing, especially when you learn project management. And also I wanted to show you two ways a multi-phase project can take place. So what we just saw before was the project management phases: initiation, planning, execution, and closing. Now you know those. But what we can also call phase is future implementation of the project, something else to be implemented. For instance, you could have phase one, we build a simple website to showcase our product. And phase two, we will allow for the client to purchase those products online. So phase one, we want the client to be able to see our products, only to see the product and maybe the price, but they cannot purchase it yet. And this is actually the example I will have in the example that comes next. Example on the initiation phase. Those will be called the two phases of the project, phase one and phase two. So we have two ways to have a multi-phased project. The first way, which is the scenario one, is we approve it all at the start of the project. We know that we want to have the two phases. We know that. We know that down the track we want the possibility to purchase the products online. But we want to have early benefits, and therefore we want to implement into two phases. So this is quite similar to the Agile methodology. The difference with Agile is Agile applies a lot of phases. You approve the full project at the beginning, and after you keep rotating between planning, execution, implementation. So this is Agile. But here the chunks to implement will be much bigger. So let's have a look at this scenario one. In initiation, we would approve everything, the budget for the two phases and also the schedule for the two phases. So when you look at the project manager schedule, you should be able to have a look at the phase two as well, maybe not in as much detail, but you should be able to see the two phases. So you have the initiation approved, after you go into planning, and after you go into execution where you implement. And after, when you go into the phase two work, you don't have to do the closing of phase one, you don't have to do the initiation of phase two, you can go straight into planning. But it doesn't have to be sequential. You can start the planning of phase two while you are doing the execution of phase one. So this is the advantage, the benefits, is you know it's approved so you can start work earlier. This is the Agile model as well. You don't wait for the end of the implementation to get starting on planning. And after you implement phase two and you close the two phases of the project at once. So this is one way of doing it. This is the scenario one. You have two phases under the same project. So the second way to go about implementing a project in phases leaves the possibility that potentially we will not be doing phase two, or at least not in the near future. It is like having two projects in a way that we have to go through the full 4 project management phases for each phase of the project. You need to get approval for phase two as well as you did for phase one. And sometimes this can occur when phase two is a bit too vague to have it approved. But I think that one of the key reasons we would have it this way is it's a way to push some work for later when you really cannot do it now. It's like having two projects. In a way, we have to go through the full 4 project management phases for each phase of the project. So you hear that a lot in a project, we will do this in phase two, which is a polite way to say, no way we are doing this now. We hear what you want, but it will be too big to do it now. This is what I have in my example next. At the beginning of the project, someone wants to implement something too big that scares people a little bit, and they say, oh, we will do that part in phase two. So this way, phase one is a little bit more achievable, and we know what we're doing, and after we can stop and reflect and see if we can get the money for phase two. So the scenario two, same as having two projects. When phase two, we're not sure we want to do it at all, or at least not in the near future. So we say, let's do that in phase two. Great idea. Let's move it to phase two. So that's it. So that was a quick summary on working on multi-phase project and the different ways to go about it. So in my example next, There is some mention about we'll do that in phase 2. So don't be confused with the phases of the project management. Phase 2 means we'll do this later on.